Hello, my friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family. How are you guys?
Oh, it's great to see everybody. There's Miss Nicole and Nuke and Crash Steel and is that Renee and Mana. Hi, you guys.
Yeah, I hope everybody's having a good day. Hope the weather is good where you guys are and things are as calm and peaceful as they could be.
Yeah, hopefully. It does. It feels like we're kind of in a pause, like that time when you breathe in and pause and you breathe out. It feels like a pause right now.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I woke up feeling like a little pressure had lifted. I almost was wondering if there's a timeline shift. Things didn't feel as intense as they did the previous few days, especially. And we got Jamie in the house. We got Rick. We got Jeff. Mercy Anonymous, good to see you. Susan Donahue, much love. Indigo Scorpio, good to see you, brother. And Crash Steel, Cliff, Rose War. They are flowing in now.
It's great to see you guys coming right in. There's Sir Calvin and Shanna. And, oh, yeah, we already said hi to Cliff. And if we didn't, hi, Cliff. It's great to see you guys.
And Gary Turner's in the house. Good. Filling up quickly. Yep, Arizona Raven.
Jimmy Jones.
And Victoria.
Hi, Miss Christine.
Victoria, do you feel that the timeline has shifted? I mean, I feel like a little bit of the pressure's off. It's interesting because when I feel like that, and you look at the news, everything is focused back on the CV issue. The whole thing with the masks and everything. It does feel. Well, I mean, I think there's a huge war going on in the heavens and all around us.
Yeah, I do believe there's a lot going on as above, so below. So you can take a look at your own life and examine that for a moment and realize that that's going on up the higher levels there.
See, Jeff said he got his first full night of sleep, and I woke up really early. Well, there was noises and stuff going on. I'm not sure what it was, but anyway, we woke up early and I just ran with it. Early for us, pre 6 a.m. So just felt kind of good today, really. And, unfortunately, it just doesn't feel like productive enough, but there's just... The day's early, yeah. There's more to do.
Yes.
And as we shared with you guys, we've had a lot of people that we're working on a daily basis now, which feels great, especially when you get in contact with them afterwards and they're doing much better. So that's so wonderful to be able to help people like that. And B. Lee says the Schumann's at 66 right now, so that's pretty high. Jeremiah says, I feel like the queen in denial that she is human. Yeah, we've all talked about that. Yeah, all those royals with the Rh negative blood. And I should speak. I'm not a royal, but I'm Rh negative. So Dave Lewis, no sleep again. Oh, brother, sorry to hear that. And so let us talk a little about angels. I think angels, see, this is another thing where in our modern minds, we might say something, we might just say angel, and there's a certain picture that comes to mind. It might not be exactly what would have come to mind if we were alive 2,000 years ago or 3,000 years ago. Things change over time. Things kind of develop, and they get a life of their own. As we know, I mean, it's like the old story. What was that game we used to play? Phone book, telephone, or something, where you have to like say a story to somebody. Just you hear it once, you say the story, and then it goes to another person. And, it goes from something like Johnny has a red lunchbox, to the teacher ate an apple.
Yes.
I mean, has like, they're so different from what it originally started out as and morph.
Yeah, the verbal lines of storytelling can change a little bit with our perception of what something means today as opposed to what it meant before.
most different. The beautiful thing about this age is, right now with the internet up and running, even though there is that electronic book burning going on, which is noticeable for people that do a lot of research, you can see things just disappearing. And the curious part is too, I had this whole topic lined up for a live about maybe 5-6 days ago, and then my computer locked up and I had to restart the whole thing, and then there was something else news-wise that was breaking that I ran with instead of this, and then I got this all lined up again and the computer locked up again. So it tells me that the dark powers don't want us talking about this, don't want us bringing some clarity or maybe getting some thoughts cranking in people's heads, and people will do more research.
Yeah, we definitely want to bring to light, angels, guides, a way to help yourself, reach your higher self. And there's many different ways to do that. And I don't think that the people who control us, I don't think they want that information out there, because if we understood how we connect to our guides and our higher self, and we could actually lead ourselves to being a better being, then we wouldn't need them.
There's an evolution that goes on in a spiritual sense. We evolve, our souls, our spirits evolve. That's part of this big experience that we have. So I want to start off by sharing with you guys a little video that was sent in, and it's a curious thing, and let's start watching here. If you notice about here, you can see there's an orb, right? And so they sent like 3 different videos at different timestamps, all showing the same orb that seems to come to the door on a regular basis. Now, is this just a piece of dust floating around? As you see it come over here. Or is this something else? And, honestly, in my opinion, orbs are basically spirits. They're beings. Would you agree, Cindy?
They are beings, and it's just that they're in their light body now. Mm-hmm.
So, this is a non-physical, but very probably, I feel this is a human being, out of body, discarnate. Now, maybe it's somebody that is taking an afternoon nap and is simply going to visit a friend or family member. Or maybe it's somebody that used to live in the house before and it's coming back to the house, or a neighbor that used to come and visit that has since passed on. It's just curious, but when you see it, as we see it there again,
it feels like it's familiar with the area. That's why I'm thinking, like you said, it's like a neighbor that's gone there before, or somebody who used to live there. I don't know. It just has a familiar feeling.
So if this is what, for instance, a discarnate human looks like traveling about, a little orb of light. And let's see here. Come back down, minimize this. And let me jump over to this. So what do you guys think this is? What do you think these are photos of?
Now, I picked up these. Mike showed them to me. He's like, what do you gather from this? And I told him, well, it feels like interdimensional beings that are highly advanced and can use their frequency to jump from dimension to dimension. And then he told me
those are actually photos of stars. And I know several people that have done this. And my friend Dave in Arizona, who, since I got rid of Facebook, I'm not really in contact with anymore. But Dave has an amazing camera, and he takes photos of the planets, which also come out looking like this a lot, and stars as well. So you could see that they look to be beings. I mean, that they're faces of different sorts. I mean, one kind of looks, wolfish to me, kind of the top middle there. I could see different things, and one kind of looks feline over there off to the right in the middle. Pretty interesting. And Calvin says, the gods. Raven says planets. So the point is that these are beings. And when we look at stars and like our sun, our sun is a being. It's a conscious being. And if a normal person looks like one of those orbs that we just saw up at the front door, out of body, can you imagine the magnitude of a being like our sun, which compared to other stars out there is rather typical, and there are some that are much more immense and impressive.
Yeah, I do believe there's varying degrees and different frequencies, just like human beings. We're a different frequency. We put off a different vibe, and we have different abilities, as above, so below. It's just, it's like that all over the place, and it's a really cool concept. And I wish that they would teach more of this information in school, more about frequency, more about vibration, because ultimately that's what it's all about.
All right. Yeah, great comments. Mary says, I was feeling geometric Merkaba shapes. Good catch, too. Most definitely. So Cindy didn't remember, but when she was channeling before, we were talking about this, and I forget who you were channeling, whether it was the Pleiadians or it might have been Lakshmi, but basically said that the stars are like vehicles for consciousness too. So really interesting to think about. And when you look up at the stars at night, you're really seeing the angelic choirs that are talked about. You could look at the Bible and so many other holy books in a different light. When you're recognizing, you're looking up at amazing beings that are so far advanced and have done perhaps a little bit more work than we have at this point in time. But again, that perhaps we are evolving towards as well. So really interesting stuff. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of interesting too, because our friend Allison over in the UK, she also has, and I've done videos in the past, she puts water in a silver bowl and puts a couple of crystals in, and she could get images of this of different beings. And I had gotten an image. I asked her to do one of Enki, and it was really interesting, the being that came back, and I did a video on that previously. She's doing some more for me right now, and I'll have some of those for you guys hopefully in another few days, hopefully. So it's fascinating. So when we look at the archangels, and in many traditions, well, most of us are familiar with the 4 archangels, and then there's also the 7 archangels, and there's possibly even more archangels, depending on what traditions. And these are out of the Judeo-Christian tradition, and so mostly everybody's heard of the 4 archangels.
Oh, that's Uriel.
Yeah. Michael or Michael and Gabriel or Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel. So 4 angels in the Bible with names. So Michael, the only archangel in the Bible is Michael. Well, it's kind of not true, because you have Gabriel, which pops up as you see. Gabriel arrives with messages for Daniel, Zechariah, and Mary. He's mentioned these 3 times. We know about Michael arguing with Satan over the body of Moses. Later in Revelation, Michael leads his army of angels in battle against the dragon. Michael is also mentioned in the book of Daniel, though here he is not called an angel, but one of the chief princes. Interesting. Your prince and the great prince. In these instances in Daniel, Michael is referred to by another supernatural being who may or may not be an angel. And Raphael, he makes his appearance in the book of Tobit, which is one of the apocryphal books of the Bible. He is mentioned 29 times in this one book, and Raphael appears to Tobias in the form of a man, whereas most angels merely communicate God's message. Raphael accompanies Tobit on his quest, offering advice and encouragement, perhaps even being an instrument of healing for Tobias's father, Tobit, and Tobias's wife Sarah, which gets me thinking about like Krishna, when Krishna was on earth and offering Arjuna his advice on things as well. So interesting, these heavenly beings. And again, we are multidimensional beings, so we operate in many different dimensions, and certainly beings that are much more powerful than us would easily be able to transfer consciousness and take vehicles as needed in order to help wherever they could, if they were so inclined. And Uriel is another apocryphal angel, and he's mentioned by name only 5 times in the book of 2nd Esdras. He comes to the prophet Ezra with messages from God, and at one point he holds Ezra's hand and actually comforts him. And interesting stuff, because we've talked about before too, Enoch and Elijah were both 2 people that quote-unquote walked with God, and then they were
Gone.
Bye-bye, and became Metatron and Sandalphon, 2 great archangels.
And I want to say a super big special thank you to Miss Susan Donahue. She says many thanks and much love. Keep your vibe high. Stay in joy. Thank you so much, Susan.
So these are signs of the elements. And you see fire, water, air, and earth. And we also see the 6-pointed star. And I've talked to you guys about the Golden Dawn and the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, which works great to get rid of everything from Dracos to nasty little grays to discarnate human beings and demonic entities as well. And in part of it, it refers to the fact that you're drawing down a column of light from the heavens, from Source, from God, Prime Creator, through your crown chakra, sending it down through the whole center point of your body, which is your Tai Chi pole, and basically QiGong. And you were talking about the Tai Chi pole the other day, and you didn't really realize it. I forget what you were saying, but it was interesting because I was recognizing it, that you're referring to the Tai Chi pole without really realizing what you were talking about. But basically there's a straight line column of light that comes through us, and all the chakras, come off of that. The 7 main chakras come off of that. And of course that goes from the crown down to the perineum, and down past the perineum. Actually, it even goes down into the ground in reality, and it goes up above the crown in reality, stretching out into infinity. So all you're doing is you're consciously drawing energy from Source, and you're bringing it through your body, which helps to activate the 6-rayed star, which is a 3-dimensional, well, actually I should say it's a two-dimensional flat representation of your Merkaba, which the light is what activates it. Also through the elements. And so why do we have the elements up? Because each archangel is basically residing over the elements. Archangels are the 4 elements: air, fire, water, and earth. So this gets into that. And this, for most of you guys out there, I would think is completely fundamental, and you're well aware of this. But.
Oh, yes. And well, some people are actually possibly even afraid to study the archangels because of things we've been taught or things we haven't been taught. People are really, at least when I wasn't fully awake, I was afraid to look into guides, spirit guides. I was afraid to look into angels, and because my perception of it was that, well, I was taught that, oh, you could burn in hell, if you mess with these entities, they're dark and they're evil. So, I think it's a common thing to know, but maybe people haven't been able to dive too deep out of fear.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of it is fear and conditioning. When you look into it too, it's just interesting to look at the history of this too, because as we're going to see, a lot of this philosophy here is really, it's really so related to Zoroastrianism and the ancient Persian lore, as we're going to take a look at as well. So there's a lot to this. There really is. And it's fascinating to get into. And these beings are very, very powerful beings. And, basically part of their job is keeping the manifest universe together. Mm-hmm. And, through the elements, because the elements are how this manifests. If you look at the pentagram, when you have the point at the top, that's showing the descent of spirit into matter through the use of the elements. And so again, the 4 archangels are extremely powerful beings that can be used when asked to remove such nasty things as the aforementioned, interfering grays and demonic entities, and even be useful against Dracos, etc. And this battle that we are in is most definitely multifaceted, multidimensional, and it's huge and expansive. So they don't really want you to know, again, to call on these beings. And many people do. There are people that will wear an amulet of St. Michael for protection. It's traditional to do things such as that. Of course, a lot of people will wear the cross, again, as a representation of the Christ energy. And there was one other photo I wanted to bring out too, to touch into. I forgot to pull it out, but towards the end, I'll see if I can dig that up. So very interesting. Raphael is over air, and Michael is over fire, and Gabriel water, and Uriel earth. Also corresponds to the directions, the 4 cardinal directions, which is, curiously enough, you'll find some disagreement when you go back farther over the traditional right now. Because in most circles, you're going to find Raphael is air, and that's east. And Michael is fire, and that's south. Gabriel's water, and that's west. And Uriel is earth, and that's north. But not all at the same time. And so then we have the 4 elemental kings, which are Gob, Nixa, Paralda, and Jin. And those, again, are referring to the elements. So the elemental kings are underneath the archangels as far as the hierarchy goes. Of course, you have God's source at the very top. And then we have like the archangels. Some people will put the archonic forces, if we're starting to talk into Gnosticism, higher than the archangels, including the demiurge. And then go to the archangels. And then you would go down to the elemental kings, and you can envision them as kind of like the traditional fairies of lore. Like Jin, for instance, is usually looked at as a fiery serpent or a dragon, for instance. And Gob is usually looked at as more of like a gnome or a dwarf. And Nixa and Paralda, Nixa is the water, and is usually done like a mermaid, merman, and Paralda like your traditional air fairy. So interesting, and a lot of these go back to ancient grimoires as well, which we could trace back to the legendary, quote unquote, maybe not so legendary King Solomon and all of his magical endeavors.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of stuff that we're not exposed to, like, on purpose. I think one way to get to know your guides, or at least ask for their help, is the next time you lose something, like you lose your keys, lose your phone, sunglasses, just say, ask your helpers. You say, helpers, I need help finding this. And then follow and see what happens. See if a thought drops in your head. See if you walk by something and finally you glance and you see it. I work with them all the time like that. And it's really important to create a relationship with them.
Most definitely. And the other thing that I've noticed is that the forces of light and benevolent beings, now some people think you should never cross traditions, but I don't have a problem with it at all, because I feel like the forces of light, love, and unity consciousness are all working together, and I don't think that they view that there's any real division between forces of light according to human-made methods of division. In other words, I'll mix Judeo-Christian tradition by doing something like the lesser banishing ritual at the pentagram, and have absolutely no problem, doing a mantra to Vishnu, Krishna, or Lakshmi, or Ganesha to remove obstacles, because these beings all feel benevolent, and you'll know them by their energies. It's pretty obvious when you're in the presence of something that's benevolent and something that's malevolent. It's just obvious. So I think the Dark Ones have gotten us, they try to condition us to think that anything that's not of our own is demonic and a negative entity, but it's not the case at all. Not at all. And I think they work together, and whatever we call them, because their names might not be the same depending on what tradition you're looking at, but you might be talking about the same people, the same beings, the same energies. So through the use of sigils, you can call in these elemental forces, and these are the sigils for the elemental kings, which in my workings in the past I always had up in my meditation room, as well as right now. And in my bedroom I have sigils of the archangels. It's something I've always done. I have them pretty much around the house too. And I feel that they are very strong and protective energies, and they do help to keep dark forces away.
And it works really, really well. I'm getting great sleep now, whereas before it seems like there was something in there all the time. And granted, a lot of it is the belief system, but I wasn't aware of the sigils before, and I didn't understand their power, and I might put them up in the bedroom, and they worked. So, that makes me curious. Boy, is that my belief system, or is there something more to it? Is it his belief system? Our belief systems can really cause a lot of havoc, or they can really help us.
So you're looking over here at goetic seals from the Lesser Key of Solomon. So sigil magic goes back thousands of years. And it's basically, it can be created on what we call a rosy cross. For one, there's different ways of making sigils, but they represent the essence of a certain being, whether it's an archangel or whether it's an elemental king. In some of the magic attributed to Solomon, some of it is actually conjuring dark entities, which I've never done and would never do. I'm not going to go down that route, never did. So it's got a very, very long tradition, and there's different ways of creating them as well. You could even create them just by the name of something, and I used to do that as a kid in high school, just doodling as well. Like if you took, for instance, a name, like say if I took Michael and I drew an M, and then I drew an I on top of the M, and then drew a C, and then I would put the whole thing in, and where lines duplicated, they would get eliminated till you came out to one particular sigil or shape that would represent that essence. And since this world really is a holographic universe and it has certain programming, we're living in a construct, and that's one of the mysteries as well that's been, it is kind of getting uncovered right now. You just have to learn the programming that we live in, and then you can manipulate the programming.
Yeah, it's like writing code and then using the code that you wrote. All of this stuff has a code, and I think there's quite a lot of good stuff in astrology too. I think that's part of the programming, or at least that's part of reading your personal code, how things work with your body, how the light reacts when it hits your body, or how you react when a certain light hits your body. So, it all can be broken down, not simply, but it's a very interesting place that we live in.
Yeah, and Chris P is chiming in, as well as Susan, with some wonderful thoughts there, and Scott, exactly. Scott Moore says, once we learn the code, we can actually be the programmers, and we can reprogram our own DNA. As Rose War says, words have vibrations, they have power. A person's true name is power. Oh yeah, and if you know the true name, you have power over that thing. That's part of magic as well, and always for good, and especially like when you're doing things for others, because that just amplifies so much. It really does. It amplifies in such a beautiful way with the law of karma and cause and effect. So interesting stuff here that I wanted to touch on. Now getting to the Watchers, the Grigori. So many realizations growing up, going through different traditions. As I've shared with you guys, was born Catholic, and then there was a really charismatic young Baptist minister that came by, and I talked to him when I was like 10, and so I dragged my mom for the first time ever to a different church than a Catholic church, and we started to go and follow him because he was just full of love and good energy. But since I've gone to probably at least 30 or 40 different denominations in Christianity, at least, I've made it a point to go to everyone I could possibly go to, including like Jews for Jesus and evangelical. I remember that was the first time I felt like amazing life force power was with the laying on of hands and getting slain in the spirit. So, I've seen all that, and then I've also experienced energy and different beings as well, elemental beings and more nature-based beings through pagan circles, as had very, very good friends that were Wiccan, so went to their ceremonies, took part of that as well. Pretty much everything I could think of, I've tried to experience firsthand. And that's part of why I feel that it really is, it's not about any one particular tradition. It's all about where our heart is, because there's good people in all traditions. So interesting, the Grigori and Italian witchcraft. You call on the Grigori, the Watchers, to come and serve as guardians to the portals between the worlds, the physical world and what lies beyond. And when you look into these traditions, it's really interesting because I came to start to realize that we're talking about the same stuff. If you are somebody that's into either paganism, witchcraft, Wicca, and you're doing a circle, you call on the watchtowers to guard the four corners, the four directions, the four elements again. So what we're doing is we're really calling on the same beings, whether we are calling them the Archangels or the Grigori. And it's interesting too, you see the Grigori are called upon to preside over our rights, allowing magical acts to establish themselves in the astral plane or dispel them. As they can make the final decision, they could override, so to speak. They are a stellar race, gazing down from the skies, watching the strega and assisting in their rites. They occupy the positions of the four royal stars, Aldebaran, Regulus, Antares, and Fomalhaut. The Grigori are the original essence behind the four archangels. It's believed that the Grigori escort the strega to the realm of Luna after physical death. Pretty interesting when you think about it, no?
It's all very interesting. And, this can be, I don't know, I feel like it can be manipulated to work with your own personal belief system. I don't think this stuff is like, once it's written down, it's carved in stone, and it absolutely has to be this certain way, because everything has changed, through the years. And if I get into something like this, I kind of customize it to me, and there's a few rules that I follow, but not really. I mean, not to the core. I have to be comfortable with what I'm doing.
So, yeah, it's very interesting, too, because we've worked with, as we said, we worked with the Archangels' energies on a regular basis, a daily basis. And then we also work with some of the devas as well on a regular basis. And it works. And it does seem to work very well.
Yeah, it does work really, really well. And there's other things that you can do too. This is just one of the many.
So whatever we're calling them, whether it's the Shining Ones, there's legends all over the globe of the Shining Ones, or, devas, elemental energies, Grigori, Watchers, angels. These are beings. They're real beings that do exist, and they're very powerful, and they're basically one of their functions is to help us if we ask for it. And again, you have to ask. So the 4 archangels also do correlate to these 4 stars. Again, Aldebaran, Antares, Regulus, and Fomalhaut. Fomalhaut. Curiously enough, is it where their locations are, you could draw a circle with a cross, which is a universal symbol that we've seen time and time again all over the globe. As we know, the cross is a symbol that actually predates Christianity, and there's a lot of different types too. You could, basically, you could see that Ankh in some ways is like this, and there's many other different types of crosses, Celtic crosses as well. And, it gets you looking at the Anunnaki. You could look at them in some different lights as well. Now, it's really curious because I think there's a lot of confusion and a lot of on purpose blending and making things hard to figure out.
Definitely making them hard to figure out, which in some cases I would imagine can make the whole thing not work, possibly. There's so many variables that could go in to these things. I think the number one most important thing, though, is your intent is so important. That's like everything, because you can control the ether with your intention, and that's powerful.
So here we have, looking at the different linguistics of it. In Hebrew, Nun, Resh, Ayin, and which basically can be translated over into the Greek as Grigori. Again, watchers. And interesting enough, to the Egyptians, the 4 major watchers were Ta, Anubis, Osiris, and Horus. Very interesting to put all these things together and see. I think a lot of the time we are talking about the same things in different language, and because of that different language, it makes it feel like we're talking, Greek to each other, and it goes back to the whole Tower of Babel thing. And, perhaps pre-Tower of Babel, we were able to fully communicate without words and just do everything telepathically, which I think we are heading back to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I believe we're headed back toward that direction. And I think a lot of the technology we've been given is just to cover up our organic abilities that are waking up now. Our thoughts are things, and frequency and vibration, and those things can be translated when they move through your body. So, it all gets really, really interesting, and it's a lot of fun to learn things and study things and check out different belief systems and explore all of this stuff that we were never exposed to when we were younger. At least I wasn't. I think all of this stuff should be out in the open and discussed and explored.
It's fascinating stuff. It really is. And so here again, you see another way of looking at things. As you see over here, we have Raphael in the east, and we have Uriel, and, equating them too. So Uriel with Aldebaran, and Michael with Regulus, and Raphael with Antares, and Gabriel with Fomalhaut. And, here you have the 4 ancient royal stars. Now, interesting too, the effect of different cultures on different traditions. So, as many people know, there have been, the Jews experienced exiles, and we know about the lost tribes of Israel. And if you look back into history here, you see Jews have been residing in Persia since around 727 BCE, having arrived in the region as slaves after being captured by the Assyrians and the Babylonians. According to one Jewish legend, the first Jew to enter Persia was Sarah Bat Asher, granddaughter of the patriarch Joseph. The biblical books of Isaiah and Daniel and Ezra, Nehemiah, Chronicles, and Esther contain references to the life and experiences of Jews in Persia and the accounts of their relation with Persian kings. In the book of Ezra, Persian kings are credited with permitting and enabling the Jews to return to Jerusalem and rebuild their temple. Its reconstruction was effected according to the decree of Cyrus the Great, and then Darius and Artaxerxes, king of Persia. Great event in Jewish history took place in the late 6th century BC, by which time there was a well-established and influential Jewish community in Persia. Jews in ancient Persia mostly lived in their own communities. Persian Jews lived in the ancient and until mid-20th century still extant communities, not only of Iran, but Armenian, Georgian, Iraqi, and it goes on. But the thing is the effect of Persian beliefs on Jewish tradition, because this is when the whole line of messianic thought came out. This is where it comes from. And the whole starting to look for a Messiah, and really also viewing the world in a very, very dualistic sense. And we've talked about Mithras and Zoroaster and compared that to Christ, and you could see the influence on Jewish tradition as it really did change and evolve. And it's interesting when we start looking in Zoroastrianism as to angels, for instance. You have the Zada in Zoroastrianism, member of an order of angels created by Ahura Mazda. Now, Ahura Mazda is God, so it's a little bit, it's not really different, I guess. It's very much Taoist in the sense that there's total opposites. So Ahura Mazda is like source God, all good though, all good, and Ahriman is the dark one. So this order of angels was created by Ahura Mazda to help him maintain the flow of world order and to quell the forces of Ahriman and his demons. They gather the light of the sun and pour it onto the earth. Their help is indispensable in aiding man to purify and elevate himself. They teach him to dispel demons and free himself of the future torments of hell. Persons who remember the Yazada through ritual offerings receive their favor and prosper. Zoroaster prayed to them to grant him strength for his mission. And so the principal Yazadas are mostly ancient Iranian deities, reduced to auxiliary status. Atar, fire, Mithra, Anahita, and Rashnu. Shrarosha? How would you say that? You want to try?
Not really. Oh, Srosha. 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 Got it.
And Verithragna. So, very, very much strongly dualistic system. Complete light, complete dark, complete good, complete bad. Very much a dualistic system of thought that we had over in Persia, which, most definitely had its effect on Jewish traditions and what would become Christianity.
Yeah, there's a lot of belief systems thrown in the mix, And I want to say thank you so much to Spartano Negative for 1111. And that's really beautiful. That's all in alignment. And alignment is a beautiful thing. And that's part of the programming, is how to pull ourselves into alignment so that we can function in this world.
So many of us are very familiar with this symbol. The winged disc with the guy popping out on top, which we have seen all over Sumeria, Babylonia, as all over the Middle East, Acadia, and all the way up into Persia as well. So also known as Arda Fravash, the holy guardian angels. Each person is accompanied by a guardian angel, which acts as a guide throughout life. They originally patrolled the boundaries of the ramparts of heaven, but volunteered to descend to earth to stand by individuals to the end of their days. So think about this too. So all the stars we see up in the sky are very, very mighty, powerful, heavenly beings. Because the heavens are right up there. They're right up there, and they're all around us, also on different dimensions as well. Different densities and different dimensions. So these beings, and Cindy got this in channeling too, and she probably doesn't remember because she is kind of comatose when she's channeling. She's not always aware of what she's saying. But on a certain level, those beings, those stars that we see, even our own sun, is actually having an experience like we are having right now in a different density. Like they are in the body. Perhaps they are, at a party right now having a good glass of wine or maybe a beer and doing a barbecue. I mean, in reality, they are having different experiences. Their consciousness on a different density is having a different experience. Mother Earth right here is alive and very, very much physical and tangible to us right here. And her consciousness is here, but on a different level, she might be having a romance with Mars. Maybe. They could be frolicking in the hay somewhere.
Yep. I mean, in a way, it all kind of makes sense how these different beings, these different consciousnesses could be anywhere doing anything. And these are abilities that we have too, but we don't understand them and we haven't been taught to use them. And I think that that's going to be changing, slow but sure. How to use our energy bodies, how to travel in your Merkaba. These things are coming to light slow but sure. They've kept them down for a long time, but you can only stifle nature for so long, and nature always finds a way. And these are our natural given abilities.
Rose War has a question for you too.
Okay.
You just went past it right there.
Oh, okay. Sometimes I'm afraid of... Oh, hold on.
So Rose War has a question for Cindy about channeling.
Don't be afraid, because they're telling me that you already have somebody watching over you. I would do the writing if you're still afraid, even after you, because I know that you have someone watching over you. That came through loud and clear. But just for your own comfort, for a while, do the channeled writing. You're totally okay. You're golden.
So as we were saying, this one order, the Holy Guardian Angels, the Arda Fravash, each person is accompanied by one, which acts as a guide throughout life. They originally patrolled the boundaries of the ramparts of heaven, but volunteered to descend to earth to stand by individuals to the end of their days. And Ahura Mazda advises Zarathustra to invoke them for help whenever he finds himself in danger. If not for their guardianship, animals and people could not have continued to exist, because the wicked Druj would have destroyed them all. So one of the things we see strongly when we look at Zoroastrianism is the complete duality. And, the God that is the God of light, and the dark one, Ahriman, is just wanting to destroy everything and everybody. Truly, it's just like when you read that biblical phrase that your enemy Satan roams around like a hungry lion looking to devour any that come along his way. That's the picture that's painted. And if it wasn't for these higher powers, these higher entities, the literal stars in the sky, who could put their consciousness into vehicles that would enable them to actually help us, on this level. Without them, we would be in trouble, according to this tradition. And without a doubt, from what I've experienced, I have most definitely called on the archangels to help against these dark beings, and it's worked time and time and time again.
And it's our belief systems, what we've been brought up with, that keep us from advancing, and our need to pick people out and punish them for their natural abilities. And this is what's kept us so in the dark for so long, is this separateness, this divisiveness, this need to shun other people for something that they're just naturally doing. That I wish it wasn't like that, but it still is. And hopefully things will change.
Most definitely. Because, when you look at it, the Bible itself is channeled. It's pretty much all the holy books. They are channeled material from higher sources. So very interesting to see. The Fravashi also serve as an ideal, which the soul has to strive for and emulate, and ultimately becomes one after death with. And it's the same thing with the devas. These type of energies, these are benevolent beings. If you look at some of the stories, you wonder, why do so many of the gods of mythology seem so human? And again, it's because as above, so below in so many ways. And then among the humans, we've had those that are literally saints, and then we've had those that are literally demons, as we have seen throughout history. So a wide range there as well. And this has actually got a list of all the different Yazada angels. Very interesting stuff when we start to really look cross traditions. So, are you guys familiar with the Zohar and Kabbalah? Because Hebrew mysticism really sheds a very different light on things than fundamentalism. And when you go into Hebrew mysticism, Jewish mysticism, then it's really congruous with so many other systems, and we can see that we're always talking about the same things, again using some different language. And so the Zohar was written for people who have already achieved spiritual perception. This is what we're talking about. So as Jesus said, there's those things. He speaks in parables to the masses, because most of the masses just really won't get things. They're not going to get things other than simple stories. And so he talked about morals and basic right and wrong through parables. And then to the inner circle, he taught them the secrets. Well, the Zohar is written for people who have already achieved spiritual perception. It's for people that are ready to understand things that are hidden. Quote unquote, the occult, and how the universe really works, and things like we're just talking about now, how consciousness works. And, there is spiritual evolution, a natural progression as we go from one state of being to another. So we were talking about those elemental forces, and, we have an elemental force that helps us with our garden, and Cindy has named him Olaf. And because he looks like Olaf from some cartoon.
Frozen. He looks like Olaf from the cartoon Frozen. I know you parents remember Olaf because he's so sweet, and his demeanor and everything about him just screamed Olaf.
Well, if we go into the Western mystery tradition and things like the Kabbalah, these elemental beings are our consciousness. They are not complex like us. They do jobs and they progress. They work maintaining the natural world, and there are elemental beings that are attached to you, and they're in charge of maintaining your body, your physical makeup. So there are elementals assigned to you, and without them and their work, you wouldn't be alive. This physical body wouldn't be alive. And the interesting thing too is, I mean, I've found this through Western mystery tradition, Kabbalah, paganism, but then I also found it going through QiGong and learning about QiGong and medical QiGong and communicating with the elemental beings that help control our body. And the gentleman that created craniosacral therapy, Dr. John Upledger, he talked about the inner physician is how he worded it. So whether we call it the inner physician, whether we recognize it as elemental beings that are maintaining the elemental balance in your body between the different elements that make up the physical body, we're talking about the same things again, just using different language. So it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's all interconnected in one way or another. Just choose your form. What do you feel most comfortable studying? What do you feel drawn to? And then don't be afraid of that. Go dive into it. Check it out. See what resonates. See what sticks. Just get curious. And that's the best state of mind that we can be in. That's what I feel.
So when we look at things in a literal sense, we see things in one way. You know, like you could take that Jesus had 12 disciples. Well, why do you have 12? Well, because there was 12. But when you look at things in a different way, so like in the Zohar, now it's a collection of commentaries on the Torah. So this is not going into the New Testament. Obviously, it's Judaism. But it's finding the wisdom and the hidden mystery that's in it. Things like we have talked about with the symbolism of 12, because then we have 12 signs of the zodiac, 12 months, 12 tribes of Judah. I mean, it goes on and on and on. And it could relate to the 12 strands of DNA that are coming back online in us as well. There's different ways of looking at these things. We can look at them very, very simplistically, take everything at face value, but then you're missing the big wisdom. You're missing the things that really make a difference. And this is what the Zohar is about. It's about deciphering the hidden things in the Torah. And thus we have the Kabbalah, and also going deeper. And really, again, it's all about spiritual evolution. The Zohar contains all the spiritual states that people experience as their souls evolve. Very different than what you get from, traditional fundamentalist teachings, which really keep us in the dark. At the end of the process, the souls achieve what Kabbalah refers to as the end of correction, the highest level of spiritual wholeness. Now, this would equate, again, to self-realization if we're talking Hinduism, nirvana. It's again about higher states of consciousness. And I got some more links going into that as well. So there's so much to look into, and things are much deeper than most people realize as well, and interconnected.
That's a key word for me, is all interconnected. There's everything can be paralleled across from one point to the next, and that tells me that this information was all over the world.
And so Soul Reviver was talking about Christ consciousness, because that's what it's about. And again, I know I see comments every day, have you accepted the finished work of Christ on the cross? And, I could comment back, well, I did that like 40 years ago. But then I realized that there's more to it than that, because it was never about a blood sacrifice. It's about what we're supposed to become. And if it was about the blood sacrifice, it's just another blood sacrifice. And what type of entities demand blood sacrifice? We saw blood sacrifices all over the globe in so many different cultures. And I will never believe in a blood sacrifice, but I most definitely believe in Christ consciousness.
Thank you so much. Feel free. Super chat match. Thank you so much. Thank you for your support.
Much love, and thank you for your support. It's awesome. As Brother Natsaya says, and I love this guy, just so you know. He's quite a person, and you don't want to see him go ninja, I'll tell you that. We were watching some videos of him doing his thing. He's impressive to watch. Jesus of Nazareth was the perfect example of a human being. And again, it's about the consciousness that's there. We've talked about the symbolism. What's up with the number 33?
Right.
Well, it's vertebrae. And what's up with the eye of Horus? Well, it's your pineal gland. This is all about awakening consciousness. This is exactly what it's all about, and it's about soul evolution and the evolution of consciousness.
Yeah, and it's about hidden meanings. There's a lot of stuff in the Bible that's, well, a lot of the things that they're saying isn't exactly what they're saying, but a lot of that stuff is coming out now, which I think is beautiful, because it's not that I want to crush anyone's belief system, but I do think it's important that you understand what you're looking at to a degree that is fair. There should be a level playing field.
Exactly. So we shouldn't be afraid of any of these, benevolent beings, whether, we're looking at them in the term of archangels or watchtowers or elemental beings. They're there in all these different traditions. And we could go into Islam too. Islam has a good, strong tradition with the archangels as well. They're there in really all different traditions. And in Hinduism, they're the devas, as well. And we've felt their energies, and that they're beautiful and positive, and they wait for us to ask because they will not impose their will on us. The ones that do things without asking are the dark side, and they are always imposing their will on us. And as we know, they're trying to right now, set it up to force things to, be in each one of our bodies with their 2 billion whatever that's already, in the works. So do we most definitely need some help from these beings. And so, pray to them, invoke them as you feel comfortable with, but just recognize that there is an energy exchange that goes on. And I don't know if Cindy remembers this, if it was channeled or not, but just talking about how it works, that we have to send our energy, our requests, our energy, our desires up to them. Then they could take it, amplify it, and send it back to us.
Yeah, because it's like a matched energy type thing. You have to put it out to get it back.
And I see truth co-ops in the house. I didn't see when you got in here, Diana. Yeah, and Rose's War, all religions have their truth. It could be clouded by other stories. Yeah, most definitely. And what happens too is just with human ego and the way things go when two tribes become enemies, then the gods of my enemy are my demons, and vice versa, and that's what happens. And then also when you have these darker forces that are always just trying to keep us separated, then they will always whisper in the ear, quite literally at times, that those are dark energies, anything to keep us, divided. So we must get up and above that.
Yeah, that's really important. The divisiveness needs to go.
So guys, I want to thank you so much for your support as always, right here on YouTube, also on Patreon and on Ko-Fi. It's always a pleasure, and I'm glad we got to do this one. These type of ones I feel are real fun.
They are fun, and they give us some really good information and some practical ways to put it to use. So God bless and namaste.
God bless, guys. Namaste.